Welcome to Too Fond of Books. My name is Janelle and this is a tag video, and this is a very late to the game tag video. I was tagged by Scott Nelle at Gunpowder Fiction and Plot. Thanks guys for tagging me. This is the Pi Day book tag, and this is obviously not Pi Day. But the questions seemed fun and I thought I would do it anyway. So this should be a shorter video. There's only 5 questions. And since it's not Pi Day and we are very far from Pi Day, I probably won't tag anybody either. So let's just get right into it. The original video is from Literature Science Alliance, and the very first prompt is, pi is an irrational number. Name a character who you feel is irrational. And I thought about this question a lot actually, and I immediately thought of Mrs. Bennet from Pride and Prejudice. She is definitely an irrational character. She's just crazy. But then I thought that I would maybe take this question into a little bit of look at it in a slightly different way. And so I thought of Ian Rutledge from the series by Charles Todd. This is the first in the series called A Test of Wills. This is a post-World War I historical mystery series that I love. Ian Rutledge is a fantastic character, and one of the reasons why is because he is, at times, irrational. And let me explain that. When I was thinking about what would make a character irrational, I actually looked up the definition. I mean, I know what it meant, but I was curious to see some of the definitions, and they were deprived of reason, deprived of sound judgment, utterly illogical. And Ian Rutledge, as a detective, he is a detective for Scotland Yard, and he is a rational man. He is capable of sound judgment, he solves cases, he's a smart guy. However, he is experiencing extreme PTSD from the First World War. Now, in this time period, they did not call it PTSD, but that's what it was. He had some experiences during the war, and as a result of that, he is at times irrational. So what happened was he had, I think it would be the sergeant, I'm not entirely sure, but the man underneath him, so he led a squadron of soldiers in the First World War, and a man named Hamish was kind of like his second in command. And it was fairly late in the war, and everybody was, tired and just, sick of the waste. And Hamish, they were called to go over the top, and Hamish refused to send his men to die. He knew that was what would happen, was they would just die and nothing would be gained by it. And so he refused to send his men over the top. Ian Rutledge, as the man in charge, told him it's a direct order, you have to go, and Hamish directly disobeyed that order. And the procedure was for Hamish to be killed in a firing squad. All of this, by the way, is horrible. But Ian Rutledge, even though he essentially agreed with Hamish, he had to do his job, he had to do his duty, follow the orders, and so he sent, Hamish in front of the firing squad, which horrifically are men from their own squadron. I mean, all of this is just horrible. Anyways, Hamish didn't die immediately, and Ian Rutledge was the man who had to finish it. He shot his good friend and fellow soldier Hamish. And so, unsurprisingly, this haunts him as well as everything else. But what it looks like now in his life post-war, as a detective, he hears the voice of Hamish in his head, and he is convinced that he can see him. So quite often you will get scenes where Ian Rutledge is driving, and he will he will kind of believe that Hamish is in the back seat over his shoulder. If he looks in the mirror, he can see him. He can definitely hear him. And he speaks to him, often out loud. Like, he will hear the voice of Hamish and he will have an argument or a discussion with him, and Ian Rutledge would speak out loud. All of that to say, other people looking at that would say that this man is irrational. But what it does is make him a fascinating, complex character, dealing with, you know, horrific events in his history. So yeah, that's my answer for question 1, is Ian Rutledge from the historical mystery series by Charles Todd. I highly recommend this series, by the way. Question number 2. Pi comes from the word perimitro, which means perimeter. Talk about a book that has to do with borders between countries or worlds. And I decided to go in a slightly different direction with this question too. And I thought of the book The Midwife of Venice by Roberta Rich. And this book came out in 2011. But the reason that I thought of this book is because Hannah is the main character in this book. She lives in Venice. She is a Jewish woman. And so she, at this time, the book takes place in 16th century Venice. So it's, I guess, yeah, 1575. And so she lives in a ghetto. The Jewish people were forced to live in ghettos. And there were very strict rules about what they could and could not do. And at the beginning of this book, Hannah is a midwife. At the beginning of this book, a Christian man comes into the ghetto to beg her to come and help his wife. And Jewish midwives were forbidden from helping Christian women. Jewish people in general were forbidden from practicing medicine on Christians, essentially. However, I thought that was an interesting way to look at this. This Christian man crossed the border into the Jewish ghetto for her help. And so that I thought that would be an interesting way to look at this question of crossing borders. And throughout this book, there is a lot about the differences between Jewish people and Christian people. There's also some Muslim influence because her husband, who was on a ship trading spices heading towards the Ottoman Empire, gets captured and is a slave, and he is desperately trying to make his way back home to his wife throughout this book. So there is actually a lot about borders, real borders between Malta and Venice, but also the borders that we put up as humans between people of different religious beliefs. And so that's my answer for this question, The Midwife of Venice by Roberta Rich. The third question is, Pi is a constant. What's a comforting book that is a constant in your life? And if you've been watching my channel for any length of time, this will not surprise you at all. It's The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. I love this book. It is still my favorite Agatha Christie. I'm currently doing a read-through, and so it might get bumped off top spot, but for now, I'm 27 books into my read-through, and it is still my absolute favorite Agatha Christie. Now, you might be surprised that I still enjoy reading it because I know exactly what happens, but that's now my enjoyment. The first time I read it and completely enjoyed being blown away by her plot in this book and not being able to guess the killer. Now I read it for the enjoyment of knowing exactly what's going to happen. It's comforting in that way, but also I read it to see if I can pick up on the clues that she so subtly lays into her plots. So this is definitely my comfort read, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd by Agatha Christie. Question number 4. Pi has infinite decimal places. What's a series that you feel will never end? And I have to say, for this one, the Alex Cross series by James Patterson. I have enjoyed this series in the past, but it is still continuing. There are 28 books out. There's one coming out later this year. There are longer series out there, but this one is a series that I feel is definitely losing quality the longer it goes on. And so I feel like it's a series that will never end, even though it should. So initially, this was a great series. Alex Cross is a great character, and the first few books in this series were phenomenal. But the longer it goes on, I feel like it's just, the past few books have been essentially the same thing over and over and over again. Alex Cross is targeted personally by a, you know, uncatchable genius killer. His family is put in danger, and Alex Cross has to solve it or do what he can. And this is just, it's too formulaic. It's going over and over again, and it's becoming unbelievable. And so why can't this great detective just solve cases? Like, just go back to the original, I think, the original thing, and this series could pick up. But at this point, I think it's a series that needs to end. And then 5, what is your favorite pie? And what's a book you feel embodies that pie? And I thought this was a hilarious question. But my favorite pie is lemon meringue. I love lemon meringue. And so in a lemon meringue pie, the filling is a lemon curd, essentially. Delicious. But the top is this light, fluffy, delicious meringue. And so I thought, what kind of book embodies that pie? So what we need is a book that is light and fluffy on top, or, you know, on the surface, but sweet and tart on the inside. Or another way to say that would be a book that has pep and zest. And so my husband was helping me with these questions, and Aaron was the one who initially thought of this, and he was totally right. Is Helen Fielding's The Diary of Bridget Jones, or sorry, Bridget Jones' Diary. This book is one that on the surface is just light and fluffy. It's a book about a woman in her 30s who is single and living her life. And so this book is definitely light. This book is definitely fluffy. This book is hilarious. I love Bridget Jones as a character, and Helen Fielding, I feel, she's hilarious. But it is also definitely, there are sweet moments in this book, in the life of Bridget Jones, and also, it's also tart. She's a tart character, I would have to say. She has moments where she is definitely, I would say, described as tart. Pep and zest are also just great adverbs for this book. So a book that embodies a lemon meringue pie, I would have to say, is Bridget Jones' Diary. On the back of this, there are 3 questions, and I think these 3 questions totally show why this book fits for lemon meringue pie. A dazzling urban satire of modern human relations, an ironic, tragic insight into the demise of the nuclear family, or the confused ramblings of a pissed 30-something. So yeah, Bridget Jones' Diary and lemon meringue pie. I think I need to go have a slice right now. So this has been my Pie Day book tag. I hope you've enjoyed that, and I'll see you for another video soon. Bye.